what we desperately need, beyond or along with better rules and reasonably smart incentives, is we need virtue. We need character. We need people who want to do the right thing. And in particular, the virtue that we need most of all is the virtue that Aristotle called practical wisdom. Practical wisdom is the moral will to do the right thing and the skill, the moral skill, to figure out what the right thing is. So Aristotle was very interested in watching how the craftsmen around him worked. And he was impressed at how they would improvise novel solutions to novel problems, problems that they hadn't anticipated. So one example is he sees these stonemasons working on the Isle of Lesbos, and they need to measure out round columns. Well, if you think about it, it's really hard to measure out round columns using a ruler. So what do? They fashion a novel solution to the problem. They created a ruler that bends, what we would call these days a tape measure. A flexible rule, a rule that bends. And Aristotle said, they appreciated that sometimes to design rounded columns, you need to bend the rule. And Aristotle said, often in dealing with other people, we need to bend the rules. Dealing with other people demands a kind of flexibility that no set of rules can encompass. Wise people know when and how to bend the rules. Wise people know how to improvise. The way my co-author, Ken, and I talk about it, they are kind of like jazz musicians. The rules are like the notes on the page, and that gets you started, but then you dance around the notes on the page, coming up with just the right combination for this particular moment with this particular set of fellow players. So for Aristotle, the kind of rule bending, rule exception finding, and improvisation that you see in skilled craftsmen is exactly what you need to be a skilled moral craftsman. And in interactions with people, almost all the time, it is this kind of flexibility that's required. A wise person knows when to bend the rules, a wise person knows when to improvise, and most important, a wise person does this improvising and rule bending in the service of the right aims. If you are a rule bender and an improviser mostly to serve yourself, what you get is ruthless manipulation of other people. So it matters that you do this wise practice in the service of others and not in the service of yourself. And so the will to do the right thing is just as important as the moral skill of improvisation and exception finding. Together, they comprise practical wisdom, which Aristotle thought was the master virtue. So I'll give you an example of wise practice in action. It's the case of Michael. Michael's a young guy. He had a pretty low-wage job. He was supporting his wife and a child, and the child was going to parochial school. Then he lost his job. He panicked about being able to support his family. One night he drank a little too much, and he robbed a cab driver, stole $50. He robbed him at gunpoint. It was a toy gun. He got caught, he got tried, he got convicted. The Pennsylvania sentencing guidelines required a minimum sentence for a crime like this of 2 years, 24 months. The judge on the case, Judge Lois Forer, thought that this made no sense. He had never committed a crime before. He was a responsible husband and father. He had been faced with desperate circumstances. All this would do was wreck a family. And so she improvised a sentence, 11 months. And not only that, but release every day to go to work. Spend your night in jail, spend your day holding down a job. He did. He served out his sentence. He made restitution and found himself a new job, and the family was united, and it seemed on the road to some sort of a decent life. A happy ending to a story involving wise improvisation from a wise judge. But it turned out the prosecutor was not happy that Judge Forer ignored the sentencing guidelines and sort of invented her own, and so he appealed. And he asked for the mandatory minimum sentence for armed robbery. He did, after all, have a toy gun. The mandatory minimum sentence for armed robbery is 5 years. He won the appeal. Michael was sentenced to 5 years in prison. Judge Forer had to follow the law. And by the way, this appeal went through after he had finished serving his sentence. So he was out and working at a job and taking care of his family. He had to go back into jail. Judge Forer did what she was required to do, and then she quit the bench. And Michael disappeared. So that is an example both of wise wisdom in practice and the subversion of wisdom by rules that are meant, of course, to see. So there are lots of examples like this that we talk about. Each of them shows that it is possible to build on and nurture character and keep a profession true to its proper mission, what Aristotle would have called its proper telos. And Ken and I believe that this is what practitioners actually want. People want to be allowed to be virtuous. They want to have permission to do the right thing. They don't want to feel like they need to take a shower to get the moral grime off their bodies every day when they come home from work. Aristotle thought that practical wisdom was the key to happiness, and he was right. There's now a lot of research being done in psychology on what makes people happy, and the two things that jump out in study after study, I know this will come as a shock to all of you, the two things that matter most to happiness are love and work. Love, managing successfully relations with the people who are close to you and with the communities of which you are a part. Work, engaging in activities that are meaningful and satisfying. If you have that, good close relations with other people, work that's meaningful and fulfilling, you don't much need anything else. Well, to love well and to work well, you need wisdom. Rules and incentives don't tell you how to be a good friend, how to be a good parent, how to be a good spouse, or how to be a good doctor or a good lawyer or a good teacher. Rules and incentives are no substitutes for wisdom. Indeed, we argue, there is no substitute for wisdom. And so practical wisdom does not require heroic acts of self-sacrifice on the part of practitioners. In giving us the will and the skill to do the right thing, to do right by others, practical wisdom also gives us the will and the skill to do right by ourselves. Thanks.